We're going to get right to it. This is a 45-minute session. There's much to cover, and so we just want to get right to it. For those of you that I haven't worked with, my name is Kelly McClellan. I am one of the career coaches in the CBCC. I am joined by my colleagues Coach Bridget, and BD extraordinaire Brian Mogren. And we are super excited to have this session with you and talk about the experienced hire recruiting process and what it's like to do an experienced hire search. Okay, so fantastic panel today, lots of good experience. And what we're going to do first is, following the ever so common Carlson way, we're going to invite the panel to tell you a little bit about themselves. I have a handful of questions here that I definitely want to ask our panelists, and then we're going to throw it out to you. You guys are familiar with this. I invite you to keep your camera on. I understand if you got a coffee house or something is keeping you from showing your face, totally understand, but want to invite you to be seen and to use your microphone. Meanwhile, if there is something broadly or specific that you want to chat with, Bridget is monitoring the chat, and she will help either elevate it to the room, or she will certainly answer it to you directly. Okay? So with that, thank you panelists for joining us. We appreciate you taking your lunch hour to be part of this session. If you would please, in about 2 minutes or so, tell us a little bit about yourself and the type of recruiting that you do. Jodi, we're going to start with you if that's okay, and then we'll go to Paula next.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. My name is Jodi Hill, and I am currently at Wells Fargo. Fun fact, it's a new gig for me. I started back in January, but before that, I've been in recruiting since fax machines were cool. So that's my that's my particular vintage. I've seen a lot of markets. I've seen up markets. I've seen down markets. I've seen all around markets, and so hopefully I can drop some nuggets of wisdom today, because I know this is a very interesting market.
That's fantastic. Paula, and then we'll have Paul follow up.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I am founder and CEO of Talencio. We are a boutique staffing and recruiting firm. We're located here in the Twin Cities, but we service clients throughout the globe, primarily those looking to access US-based talent in the medical device industry, in biotech, and digital health.
That's fantastic. Paul, and then Emily.
Trying to come up with a better way of saying I've been doing this as long as the fax machine, but it's 20-some years of building tech product data teams in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Been writing for a long time. I even put on the maroon and gold today because that's highly important. I did a session last Friday, and I reminded everybody that I thought that the Badgers suck. And of course, there were 2 people who took exception to that. So just know that my attachment to Carlson and the University of Minnesota runs very, very strong. And again, looking forward to add some nuggets of information.
Fantastic. Emily, and then we'll finish with Melanie.
Yep. Emily Beck, I'm with Russell Reynolds Associates. We are a global executive search firm. I primarily focus on the industrial goods sector, although our firm will work with global clients, US-based clients in any industry, any function. I actually am a alumni. I graduated in 2020 from the part-time program and started my career with 3M. So I was a career switcher as well, and did technical recruiting for them as a voluntary basis when I was with them for 7 years.
Awesome. And Melanie, finish this out.
Yeah, I'm Melanie Harper. I'm with Slalom Consulting. I am really focused on their business strategy or business advisory service practice, but we're a global consulting firm in 45 cities and really focused on delivering technology and business solutions to our clients.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. So what we talked about before this session started, gang, is that we have a ton of questions that we know are out there. So each recruiter is going to answer, or not every recruiter is going to answer every question. They are going to pop in and out. If there's something specific you want to ask, you are more than welcome to. But to get us started, I thought it would be helpful for you guys to understand a little bit about what the recruiter is being asked to deliver. And the reason for that is that if you can understand what they are being tasked with, then it will make it easier for you to understand, like, how do you sort of work into their radar, or what is it about that, you can't get something to happen the way you're hoping for? What's driving some of that, perhaps, that you might not be aware of? And so with that, I'm going to ask a couple questions just about the job itself. And then we're going to move into some best practices, and then we're going to ask a couple tactical questions. Okay. All right. So with that, first question is, at any given time, how many open requisitions might you be working with? And any of my panelists are welcome to jump in.
I'll jump in. We're a boutique firm, so we might be focused on half a dozen at a time. So it's going to be far less than what Wells Fargo, or Russell Reynolds, or Slalom is focused on. And when we're looking for talent, typically we're going out and finding the talent. So that's a little bit of a nugget for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say any amount of time, anywhere from 10 to max kind of 15, but that would be active searches, but you're always there's new business coming in, you're talking with clients about potential needs, leadership advisory, so it tends to fluctuate depending on time of year and general need. So yeah, it varies a bit.
So for Paula, is that if you're doing 6 at any given time, how long might those last?
Typical search would last about 10 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, could be a little bit less. It all depends upon what it is we're searching for, what level we're searching for. But I think you want to give it at least a good couple of months. It takes time to source people. That's usually about a week or two, and we never stop. But the first part of what we're doing as we're recruiting is finding the right talent, and then we've got to schedule interviews with them and get them presented to our client. And then once the client has them, they go through all their process, which is another couple of weeks. And so it just, you end up adding a week and a week and a week and a week. So it's not going to turn around in 30 days, typically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kelly, it might be worth noting that for a lot of the corporations, the internal corporate recruiting teams, many of them are smaller than they were a year or two ago because of what the economy is. So many corporate recruiters' rec loads have significantly grown, or the roles they are working on are a lot harder than they used to be because it's very specific one-off things that they don't always recruit for. So if the time the ghosting and all the stuff that we'll probably get to later, it has increased in some sense but in part of it is because the corporate recruiting teams there's just fewer. They could have gone from a team of 10 to a team of 4. So just know that on our side of this, so to speak, there's some stress as well of doing stuff with less team, less budget, less tools.
Mm-hmm. I see a lot of nodding heads on that. I'm going to pile on to that a little bit more then, if I could ask, because we had heard about a recruiting partner that has 2 recruiters and like 100 and some recs that they're trying to manage. And so I think that's a very big indicator about the workload that some of the recruiters are trying to manage and turn around. So with that in mind, what are some of the trends, or what are some of the things that people are changing in order to accommodate those loads, and how is that might changing their work in general?
I can
Jodi,
go ahead, Paul. I was going to say, from my role here at Wells Fargo is a little bit different, but previously I've always worked in kind of mid-sized companies. So I can bring that perspective. Is as workload increases, I think that a couple of things happen. Is the recruiter becomes spread thinner and thinner on the ground in terms of like even their understanding of the position, right? I mean, if I typically in an ideal world, when I was leading a recruitment delivery team, a senior recruiter who is working on kind of mid to senior career positions could probably comfortably handle anywhere from 8 to 12 requisitions where they're doing full cycle, sourcing, going to market, pipelining candidates, creating prospects. And then, but they had a real deeper knowledge of like each role and each positions and the nuance that those hiring managers are looking at. Now, as Paula had indicated, as recruiters have this kind of cascading number of requisitions that they have, then now it becomes, they know a little less, they're more now generalist about this particular role, about this particular team, about this particular project. And as a result of that, they're taking shortcuts as part of the process that wouldn't normally be there. And those shortcuts might mean they have less information to give. They're just drowning in incoming candidates. They're being less targeted with their outbound search. Those are all things that I've seen as a result of increased workload.
Mm. Fantastic. As I think about our students who are graduating in May and knowing how much is happening out there and how much the recruiters are trying to fill in openings, what advice might you have as a job seeker is trying to stand out, knowing that their attention is in many places during this time?
I'll address that real quick. LinkedIn is a tool that I think nearly every recruiter uses. So to make sure you have a robust LinkedIn profile, and most recruiters are using some sort of AI at this point. And so AI, it's search engine optimization. They're looking for keywords in your resume. They're looking for keywords in your cover letter, keywords on your LinkedIn profile. So in order to stand out, you've got to have all of those keywords. Not just once, but multiple times so that you rise to the top, but not so crazy that it just becomes insane for the recruiter to read your materials. So the presentation of all that becomes important too. It's got to look good, but you've got to have the right message as well.
And to that, I would say, providing context. If you're working in a very large organization that has many divisions and groups, just being clear of what division or product lines you're involved with, relative scale, if you do have some kind of revenue responsibility, and providing context to those things just helps us to better align the right opportunities to individuals as well. So I just recommend, small things like that. It seems like everyone might know, even in a area, but companies do restructure every so often. So sometimes we might be slightly behind what some of those nuances are. So just providing that context is helpful.
I see a lot of nodding heads with that. That's great advice, Emily. Thank you. What are some of the things that get you frustrated with job seekers? What are some of the things that you wish wasn't part of that job seekers, either behaviors or approaches?
For us, go ahead, Melanie.
Are you sure? Okay. I was just gonna say it's as basic as just reading the job description. I think is when we're working with our leaders and our teams, we're trying to be really thoughtful of what the role looks like, what we're looking for, how you're going to be set up for success in this role. Even, in this time of like, what is the working model of, like, is it hybrid? Is it remote? What city is it located? What office do you need to be close by? Those are all things that we're putting thought into it. And I think sometimes as candidates, you want to broaden your search or like, let's see if this sticks, right? But I think it just like takes time for us then to like look at their resume, see that they're not a fit, turn them down. And if you can just really align what you want to do and show that through your resume with the job description, that just like makes you stand out as a really strong candidate because you're telling us that you've read this job description and you're a really good fit for it. And then that makes me want to have a conversation with you.
I'd like to know more about that if that's okay. I'm finding that the roles that I'm successfully receiving interview requests for are roles that I'm overqualified for. So for example, if a senior finance manager, they want me to come in as a manager. And essentially kind of feels like there's a desire to find someone who checks all the boxes versus someone who maybe has done 95% of them, but there's one thing missing. In the current environment, does it make sense to only apply for roles where I have done every single thing on the job description? Or is there still room for I've done 9 out of 10 things and the 10th thing is easily within the sphere of what a professional would do with my background and experience?
I think it's both. I wouldn't limit yourself, but I would also say it probably depends on what boxes you're not checking. And then I would also say another component could be just industry. Are you switching industries? Because there's nuances to each industry, and then that impacts the role. I would say for at Slalom, like we expect a lot out of each level. And so sometimes it can feel maybe like a setback, but it's really not, because we want that person to be set up for success too. So I think it really just depends on like what boxes you're not checking.
And
I
I would say it depends on the company and team that I'm working with. I have certain hiring managers and hiring teams that are a little bit more flexible, let's say maybe on industry, looking outside of that to like what could be good adjacencies that would have some parallels they can bring over. And we do have other clients and hiring teams that they really are focused on having a certain type of skill set. So the hard part is there's no one answer to that question. As far as leveling, I would remind you that companies greatly vary across industry. I've talked to people who are vice presidents that are manager levels at another company. Title does not mean everything. Try to focus on like, you know, if it's a manager role, trying to focus on number of reports, relative scale that you have responsibility over. Try to level set on those types of things and less so on what exactly is the title of the job that you're going after.
Piggybacking a bit on what Emily said, if you are missing one of the requirements, I would address that head on in your cover letter or, somehow, and address how you would alleviate that. Give them an understanding of, okay, maybe you've done something similar, so you've got other skills that are transferable, or you can show an example of where you've learned quickly to get up to speed on a skill, something like that. But to not address it would leave the recruiter wondering, well, you're missing it.
Fantastic advice. Okay, guys, I'm gonna ask one more question, and then I'm going to open it up to the room. So you can either pop on like Lori did, otherwise feel free to raise your hand using your reactions so that we can get everybody in an order. So whatever is best, but I want to invite you to feel free to gear up for some questions. A lot of times what we're telling students is that we really want them to network, and we want them to network in a couple of ways. One is we want them to network because we want them to identify if there's opportunities coming up soon on a team, or if there's anything that is in growth mode that they want to be aware of. But we also want them to network because we are hoping that they're creating advocates on the inside, and people that would be so kind as to either forward their resume to the recruiter or their hiring manager, or even perhaps do a referral. So the question is how do referrals play into your processes overall? And when you are looking to fill a role and you're hoping to find the right candidate, where does that fit into the overall matrix of possibilities?
I can answer a little bit on referrals. Not all referrals are equal. I'll start with that, right? Networking is really important, I think, but I think it's complicated, right? If somebody who I met who at a social event all of a sudden sent me a resume and I didn't have any context around what this person's capabilities were, I could forward it to a recruiter who was handling that search. When the recruiter asked me, well, why do you think they're a fit for their job? I don't, because they can drink bourbon really well. That seems like an important qualification. So I think that, this concept of just using a name as a gateway into an organization is not a true referral. And networking in and of itself, the most valuable is when you're making those professional connections with somebody and you're sending your resume with either they know you and they can speak to the work that you do, or sometimes when I've had people who message me and say, hey, I see you're connected to Paul and Paul's recruiting for this great opportunity. Can you get your resume? I actually asked that candidate, write me your introduction. I will cut and paste and I will send it, but it should be almost like a mini cover letter, because otherwise sending a referral out to the wild blue is no different than applying to the ATS. There's no context there. So
Mhm.
Not all referrals are equal, and networking in packing, showcasing what you can do versus just making it personal connection is important.
And I like that tip too, because then the work isn't being put on the recruiter. It is you controlling the message of what you want that 2 or 3 sentences to be, so that it is properly, the context is strong for the way that Paul would receive that particular note. Great advice. Wonderful. Okay, friends, Carlson Brilliant students that are online. What are your questions? What do you want to ask the panel? You came here, you had an agenda, you're like, what do I want to walk away with? Now is your chance.
Well, they're all coming up with a question. I got a thought, which is there's no overarching theme in here about making this a little more human when we can, both on our side as recruiting, but also for us when we're doing our job search. The easy apply button is not your friend, whether it's on Indeed or on LinkedIn. Like, no, just don't. I appreciate that, because now we're relying on your LinkedIn profile being like super freaking amazing, and sometimes they're not. The other part to it is that a bit of advice from a question earlier would be, if it's me and I'm applying for a role, even if I don't have a referral to a company, I'm going to try to figure out as best I can who the hiring person could be for that role. And honestly, I'm going to throw away my Minnesota passive aggressive mentality, and I'm going to go send that person, that human, an email. My name is Paul DeBettignies. I saw your role. I applied. I am reaching out to you directly because I'm really interested in this role, and then give 3 or 4 bullet points. Here's the thing. Most people don't do this, which means most hiring managers are not getting inquiries like this. I appreciate you could also mess it up by doing an inquiry like this, and now the hiring manager is annoyed. But if I got to choose between being a little more aggressive, getting into someone's inbox versus waiting for all of the process, I'm going straight to a human if I can.
That's
Fantastic advice.
maybe to
Go ahead, Mel.
piggyback on Paul, because what will happen and what I've experienced is that hiring leader is going to pass that person's name to me as
Sure.
the recruiter, right? So there's that connection. Like maybe the hiring manager won't directly respond, but will say,
Yep.
"Oh, I'm going to pass your name." So that can be a nice thing too.
And now you've met 2 people instead of 1, and it's likely that Melanie or I will probably get back to you, because if we don't, we've now made the hiring manager look like a jerk. And so we will try not to let that happen if we can't. And so this is an opportunity now to create our network, even if it doesn't go anywhere with the role, you may have a new connection.
Awesome. All right, let's get to some student questions. Nick, why don't you kick us off?
Thanks everyone for great insights. Nicholas here. My question is, what would be some non-obvious aspects of application that might lead us to being filtered out for some of the applications?
So you're saying, Nicholas, what gets you in the no pile?
Yes.
Sometimes it can be not, it's not clear exactly what someone has accomplished or done in a role. I would say for me, like even when speaking with someone for kind of like an introductory call, and I kind of just learn really high level things, but I don't, when you leave the conversation, there's nothing that I really take away from like, wow, this person really did these things, or I see what they're trying to accomplish. So I think I can also see that in resumes sometimes, where maybe it's just pure context of I worked for this size business with this team, and we supported, X, but there's nothing about what did they do and accomplishments. So I would say anytime there's ambiguity like that, I'm not going to spend more time reaching out. I'm just going to filter that out.
And one thing for me that is also filters very similar to what Emily said. Everyone knows there's knockout questions on the most applications, right? And if you hadn't heard the term knockout questions, that's exactly what they are. Are you answering questions? One of the things I look at is when I'm looking at candidates that are applying, if they didn't, I'm going to group candidates of like, these are my target candidates, these are my second tier candidates, my third tier candidates, right? Based on who's most likely to be success. For those top tier candidates, if you're asking knockout questions because you think you know what answer I want to hear, but I don't see the correspond, because I'm going to look at the knockout question and I'm going to pull up your resume. If they are not aligned or there's something off where I'm like, you told me you have 5 years of working on Workday, and I don't see any Workday listed on your resume, that's a red flag to me. That's probably going to get you right into the no pile because I don't see evidence of the work that you've said you've done. So make sure take the knockout questions seriously because those are the recruiters' kind of easy outs, but make sure that how you're answering those knockout questions aligns well with the experience, or it's really apparent because the recruiter's telling you what's important for this position. Make sure it's in your resume.
Can I take the opposite of that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you the absolute yeses, if I can, real quick. If you've increased revenue, cut costs, made something more efficient, add metrics to your resume and your LinkedIn profile. I worked on a team of 5 people. We did this and we accomplished X. Makes it so that now I go, oh, so you've done a thing, right? I stress this because most of us don't do this. And by the way, I finished a project in 2022 and couldn't find a gig for about 4 weeks. I forgot to add that in 9 months, I hired 18 people without paying a search fee. And everybody was like, oh, hey, Paul, how you doing? I'd like to have a conversation with you about working on our next project. Even I forgot. And that should have been a layup for me. And so sometimes we forget this stuff of like, what did we accomplish in our role? And are there numbers that can be added to that?
I think that's worth repeating. So anytime you've made the company money, anytime you've saved the company money or made something better, in a nutshell. Yeah. Melanie, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, I was just, one of my tips, and I know I'm in the presence of Bridget and Kelly as coaches, but I do, like, if you read your resume after each line, just ask yourself, so what? And I think that can trigger like, why does this matter? What does it mean outside of this role, outside of this organization? And then I think that can help translate to the next role.
That's fantastic. Kinsey, what's your question?
Hi, everyone. So my question is, if you have gotten the opportunity to have an interview, it is being scheduled, at what point, or do you ever reach out to the person you're interviewing with before the interview? Or do you just let your first conversation be at the actual interview?
So are you asking, like, do you have a networking meeting beforehand or a coffee chat beforehand?
Yeah, or do you send them a message, like an email or a LinkedIn, or do you just wait till you have your interview?
I would wait till afterwards, but make darn sure I'm sending something afterwards. And it doesn't have to be like a thank you note. It can be like that. Thank you for your time. If you have any more questions, I'm available. I sent you a LinkedIn invite. Like, for sure, do that afterwards. I don't know that it helps. I haven't actually ever thought of this, but so it's a gut reaction. I don't think that I would do anything beforehand. I would for sure follow up afterwards.
Yeah, before a lot of the times the internal recruiting team or a recruiter who is an external partner is providing context to that hiring manager before or hiring panelists before that, giving them some context going into the call. So I would just leave that as that's kind of the natural intro that you're getting. And then after your call, it's perfectly fine if you want to send that follow-up note.
Awesome. Does that answer your question, Kinsey?
Yep. Thanks.
Okay, great. Obi, come on the mic.
Thanks for taking time to have this with us. I really appreciate it. So I have a quick one. I think currently with everything going on with the recruiting and everything, I just wanted to ask, usually when you see a job post, in the original post, they say nothing concerning the fact that you could apply, whether they offer sponsorship or not. But then when you start going through the application process, you get asked, would you need sponsorship or otherwise? I think there are two takes on it. Some will say no, then get in touch get the opportunity to go through and then you talk about it. Others would also say you do need sponsorship right away. I wanted to find out from you on your take, especially concerning the fact that we have OPT, some for 36 months, some for 12 months. What would you say should be the best response to that question when you're applying, when it's asked that, would you need sponsorship now in the future?
I think letting the recruiter know as soon as possible what your status is saves everyone a lot of time. So you just be very upfront and open about it and go from there.
And I would also say intentionally asking a question that isn't, you know, what is the real situation is also a very risky chance you'd be taking.
It gets a little foggy for some of the international students because there's probably no shortage of 5 or 6 different versions of what
Yep.
sponsorship might look like depending on
Mhm.
variety of things. And so that question can be challenging because based on their own search, it might lead them to a different answer. So, but the takeaway is it's the transparent and honest will win every time. It might also get you into the no pile sooner. So that's also where it gets challenging to navigate that for our international students. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lori.
I have a question. I would like to circle back on a bit of an earlier question, and it's more about finding where I belong in the current market, knowing it's a little bit saturated for what I'm trying to do. So I'm a finance professional with 20 years of experience at Fortune 50 companies and in the big four public accounting, CPA, MBA, 10 years of people leadership. And when I talk with recruiters, they're recruiting me for a director through VP roles. When I apply at companies, I'm only getting traction on manager level roles. And so my ideal would be to find a people leader role at a mid-sized or smaller company. But I'm struggling with how to figure out where I fit in the marketplace. And my sense is that maybe it's so saturated that I will have better luck finding something that's a step down. Or perhaps it's because I'm looking at those mid-level manager roles and maybe they're not to be found as much on LinkedIn and they're more found through networking. And so I'm just kind of struggling with, what do I target? Am I targeting the wrong thing, or is there a better way to go about doing it? Does that kind of make sense? What advice would you have for someone who's at that point in their career and kind of looking to figure out where do I fit?
Are you geographically fixed to the area?
Twin Cities, but not
Yeah,
any
okay.
particular part.
If it's a geographic focus, I would say networking does help, especially if you're targeting the mid-sized companies. What I will say in general, a lot of once you start progressing director plus level, tends to be a bit more of the recruiters doing a specific focused outreach to specific individuals based on targeted companies and a geographical focus. So that's why you tend to see less of that on LinkedIn and a little bit of a change in how that's done. So that's why I just say maybe networking, just to let people know, like in general, in some of those target companies of potential interest, and they can keep you in mind as things come along, but open to what others have as their experience as well in this panel.
I think what I have heard, and Paula, you might be able to, and Paul, you might be able to express this to pile on what Emily was saying. I think when you're starting at that director and above type search, those are often searches that you almost want to know them before you need that job, because those, to Paula's point, she's only got 6 going at any given time. She might not have that particular opening for now, but she might have that 9 months from now. And so it's good to know you for those future searches that are yet to appear. And for those that are on the phone, it's a good practice to just network with recruiters in general in your field of interest, in your area of interest, so that those opportunities, you know, you will both grow in your careers together over time. And it's not necessarily just that job search right now, but it's that long-term goal of building that relationship. So those are things that they can keep you in mind for. But in terms of like the immediate search, I think Emily's point about the networking is also going to be really helpful, because those that aren't using recruiters like Paula and Emily are more likely to be dependent upon who they know in their immediate space, and professional connections. Is that fair, panel?
And something to say is that I appreciate that you all are doing a job search now. You're also preparing to do your job search 2 or 4 years from now as well, right? So everybody who you are speaking with now, who does not hire you now, who you've made a LinkedIn connection with now, who you met at an event now, is also your contact for 2 or 4 years from now. Or if you end up picking up a contract or a project gig for the short run, because we need to put some money in the checking account right now, they are also the person that you might be meeting and talking to again in 6 months or 9 months, right? The economy, this is the part where I would suggest that there's a lot of rules out there that I think need to be set aside right now. And one of them is that I appreciate that if you can take a contract or a project role right now, just saying if you can't, I would do a status update that while looking for a full-time role and graduating with my MBA in the spring of and whatever, that I'm looking and open to contract or project work too, because we have a lot of companies in our town, in our region, and across the US who have not done maybe the amount of work they needed to be doing the past couple of years because they're uncertain about the economy. They're still uncertain about it going forward, but they may have something. And this is the gateway for you to get into a company, or at least fill in this time until you find your full-time role. I appreciate I did a 2-for-1 on that one, but I'm tired. I am tired of the rules. And I think if there was ever a time to toss out rules, it might be right now.
Great advice. Great advice. Justin, what's your question?
Thank you. Sorry, first question is how I get off mute. I am wondering if there are any time or any experiences you've seen where someone may not have the precise technical skills that your client is looking for, but that applicant has overcome that with displaying coachability or adaptability, and what the results of that was. If the answer to my question is never seen it, got to have the skills, great. But I'm just curious if there's any time that you can think of where some of those technical skills or lack of technical skill was overcome with adaptability.
I think if you're working within a very large organization and they know you and you're looking at another position within that organization, it's probably an easier place to migrate. But when we have a client that's coming to us and paying a fee to place the exact perfect person in a role, that'd be tough. Okay, so for me, it just depends.
And Paul, I'd say the only caveat I've seen to what you're referring to is potentially if there is someone like a planned succession, we know that person's gonna be moving like out of the role in the next, and they're gonna have overlap where maybe it's something like a specific leadership or something very specific to a niche part of a market that someone has the broader market and they just gotta learn this. That might be the only time that I've seen where we get more fluid with kind of coaching, if there's kind of that ability for someone else to provide that oversight and then kind of transition out.
One other thing that, and Emily, that's great. Thanks for adding on. But one other thing that I thought of that no one has talked about yet is on your LinkedIn profile, talk about who you are, like what your DNA is. So not just about your skills and your expertise, but what are your strengths? What really causes you to get excited about something in a good way, right? What motivates you? And you start sharing those, whether it's your disc profile or whatever, and you start sharing the real person that you are. Then you can leverage that you've talked about in, okay, well, I'm somebody that's always a learner. And so I have no problem picking up new stuff and learning new things. And that's another way that you can help to express or prove that you have the ability to grab onto something new.
And label that, right? Like say, I am currently doing, I am currently taking, I am now doing a certificate for, like call it out. Just because you haven't learned it yet, but if you're in the process of doing it, makes it easier for us to understand that this is just, again, in your DNA.
Thank you. Prakar. Oh. Is your mic working?
Can you hear?
Maybe.
How fast can you,
Oh,
how
there
fast
you
can
go.
you take? Oh,
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, it always betrays me at the worst possible time. But thank you so much for taking time out. My question is more from the perspective of international students. And I think there's a lot of good points that you have already shared, but I was just curious, as an applicant, how can we make life easier for you as a recruiter, other than sponsorship, of course? What would possibly help us stand out in any way as you're going through these huge lists of applicants week in, week out?
I've got a tinge. It's a side answer to this. It just dawns on me that I have a lot of corporate recruiter friends who don't work at Wells Fargo. They don't work at Slalom. They don't work at large companies, who don't actually know what all of the acronyms stand for when they're hiring a foreign student or someone on an H-1B visa. It may serve you well that if you're applying for a smaller or medium-sized company to actually say what your designation is and what it means. I was a little fuzzy on this about a year and a half ago. I was doing a project for a medical imaging company, and we were having folks in Brazil, Canada, and the US. And I'm pretty good at this stuff, but I had to do some reminders. I did some searching to, oh yeah, that's this and that means this. It just may help for you to be able to call out what your designation is and how long you can be working for before a next thing needs to trigger.
Great. Okay, we are almost out of time. We have about 3 minutes left. I just, want to ask one sort of broad question to the panel, and, feel free to all jump in, or a couple as it makes sense. We are in a very tight market right now. Things are a little bit, opportunities aren't moving as they were maybe 18 months ago. So as you think about it, like, would you have a best practice or piece of advice that you'd like to leave the students with as they think about, their individual searches?
I have two things I can talk. First of all, learn to tune out the noise. There's a lot of people out there on LinkedIn and every other career site who will tell you they have the silver bullet and how to beat whatever ATS or whatever. Recruiting is still highly done by touch and feel and personal preferences. So what one recruiter likes about a resume, the next one will tell you, oh my gosh, that's trash. Don't do that. So be true to yourself, tune out the noise. I also say for your search strategy, make sure, just like I said, recruiters will group kind of their highly sought, A candidates, B candidates, C candidates. Do that with your opportunities and then invest your time appropriately. The candidates you are super great fit for, those are the ones you want to take the time, tailor your resume, do a lot of work and that networking research. Your B's and C opportunities, put diminishing effort in there because your chances are a longer shot or it's a cold apply. So it will save your sanity. Don't try to go all out for every single opportunity because you will burn out. So tune out the noise, find out what you really want to do, invest there, and the rest you've got to seed the ground, but don't spend a lot of time there.
That's awesome.
Doing a search is a significant project, so have a strategy, a plan, metrics, hold yourself accountable to what you're doing on a weekly basis, measure yourself. So it might be, I'm going to apply to 10 jobs every week, or I'm going to evaluate these sites for open jobs and then check it off and show your progress, because it can be a thankless job. But if you are doing the work, you will land. It's just a matter of keeping your nose to the grindstone and making it happen.
Got two practical ones. One is that survey about the number of fake jobs that are posted is a BS survey. It is not 80 some stupid percent or whatever that number was. Like that survey is faulty across the board. Most companies do not post fake jobs. Most companies don't just post jobs to gather candidates. I'll end the rant there, but it's a long one. The second one is don't psych yourself out when you see that more than 100 people applied for a job on LinkedIn. More than 100 people clicked a button. We do not know how many actually finished the application process, how many of them are in the US, how many of them are in Minneapolis, how many of them want to be in the office 3 days a week, and we haven't even gotten to qualified salary. Do I want to work with them and do they want to work? No, do not psych yourself out by these numbers because they just cause more fear than anything else.
Awesome.
I would say it's a bit of have resiliency. It'll pay you off in every part of your life, even once you get into the role that you're in. Every person hits bumps along the road, and no one's entire career has been bumpless. So just remember that. Other part would just be, remember it's a people-based process as you go through recruiting. So just remember, even in our times where we're feeling down or hard on things, just, take a breath before you go into it and remember, like, you want to continue to make good impressions and just, as Paula had said, focus on having these metrics, do the right things and it'll come, but it doesn't always come at the exact time we would like it to.
These are all really good thoughts. I would just end with don't do this alone. Like, you have a great team at the CBCC, like best of the best. They care about you. They're so experienced and knowledgeable. Use them and also use your peers. Like, don't feel like you're competing against them. Do it together. I think the worst part of this journey of a job search is alone, because that's where the mind games come, reading these stats that aren't true, all of these things. It is just a season. This season is not your identity, and you will get a job. You are all talented. You will get a great job. You'll love it. And again, to Paul's point, in 2 to 4 years, you might have another change, right? So just keep your head in such a good mindset and use people when you need to, because that's so important.
Melanie, I could not have closed it out any better. So thank you for that. A big hand for our panelists. Panelists, again, thank you for coming today and sharing your lunch hour with us. This session is going to close out. For those of you that are attending, we'll share with you LinkedIn profiles of our panelists today, and so you can check out more details. Thank you again for everybody's time. Great questions, and have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.